Okay, today we are diving headfirst into a seriously dramatic ancient standoff. It's a story that's literally thousands of years old, but man, it forces us to ask some very piercing modern questions about what we actually value. We're stepping right into the high-stakes world of Daniel chapter 1, looking at this really stark visual contrast between the glittering, luxurious feast the world offers and the quiet, unyielding path that faith demands.
Right off the bat, we get this bold statement. He purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself. This wasn't some abstract philosophical decision made in a comfy armchair. Daniel is a captive. He's been stripped of his home, his autonomy, and just dropped straight into the center of a hostile empire. Yet right in the middle of that terrifying reality, he makes a deeply dangerous choice, laying the complete groundwork for something truly miraculous.
Okay, let's actually dive right into this. The text lays it out so clearly for us. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. He wasn't just, politely turning down a meal. By refusing the king's portion, he was making a definitive, very physical statement about his identity and his ultimate allegiance. To really wrap our heads around the weight of this decision, we have to picture the context: captivity. Daniel and his friends are foreigners living under the heavy thumb of literally the most powerful empire on earth at the time, Babylon. Defying the king? That wasn't just a minor breach of etiquette, it was a fatal offense. By prioritizing their godly standards over their own physical safety, these young guys were taking an unimaginable risk.
Now hold on, there's actually a massive misconception here. The food they were refusing wasn't some plate of poor quality prison rations, it was the absolute finest. We're talking the most luxurious, decadent, visually stunning meals imaginable, coming straight from the king's own table. Today, people would fight tooth and nail for this kind of VIP lifestyle, but Daniel, he saw this glittering feast as something that would fundamentally defile him.
And this brilliantly illustrates the physical choice sitting right there on the table before them. On one side, the king's rich meat and wine, visually representing ultimate luxury and endless comfort, but requiring spiritual compromise. On the other side, simple vegetables and water, a diet of profound simplicity and uncompromising faith. It's that classic clash, the glittering, seductive offer of the world versus the quiet, obedient path of faith. But you got to remember, this decision didn't happen in a vacuum. When Daniel actually made his request, the prince of the eunuchs was terrified. His fear was totally visceral. He basically says, look, what if the king visually sees that you look weaker or more sickly than the others? Because if the king noticed these young men looking malnourished, the prince's own head would literally be on the chopping block. The stakes were absolute life and death.
So what does Daniel do? He makes a staggering counteroffer. 10 days. Just 10 days. Honestly, it's an impossibly short time frame to expect a total, visible, physical transformation. He wasn't asking for 6 months to slowly show a dietary difference. He was setting up a highly condensed, super high-stakes test of faith.
The parameters of this test were super simple but incredibly daring. Step 1. Withhold the king's rich food entirely. Step 2. Serve only vegetables and water for 10 short days. Step 3. Visually compare their appearance to the young men eating the luxurious feast. This wasn't just a gradual health kit, guys. It was an empirical test that required a rapid, undeniable miracle from God.
And boom, here is where the impossible actually happens. A miraculous transformation. Because Daniel and his friends trusted and stood so firmly in their faith, God stepped right in. It wasn't just a victory of sheer human willpower or good genetics. It was a direct, miraculous intervention, rewarding unyielding obedience in the face of literally impossible odds.
After those 10 days, the physical, visible evidence was absolutely shocking. They looked healthier, they looked stronger, and they fundamentally looked better than everyone else who had been feasting on the king's rich food. In just 10 days, their faithfulness manifested right on their faces and bodies for the entire Babylonian court to witness with their own eyes.
The evidence totally demanded a verdict. The prince of the eunuchs didn't need to sit down and debate theology with Daniel. He simply looked at him. The visual proof was undeniable. So he permanently took away the rich food and wine, leaving them with the vegetables and water. He saw the undeniable physical difference that faith produced, plain as day. Which forces us to pivot to a really earnest modern reflection. Do we fear God enough to do what is right? This is where ancient history crashes right into our daily reality.
It forces us to look in the mirror and ask, when the pressure is absolutely on, do our actions actually reflect our stated beliefs?
Think about it. What is our modern king's meat? It's the temptation to cut corners in business just to grab that luxury car, build a massive house, or secure a really quick payout. It's an incredibly visually attractive offer, right? On the flip side is standing firm for righteousness. When that glittering opportunity arises in front of you, do you stand your ground or do you just compromise without a second thought?
So the crucial point really boils down to this. Should we spend our whole lives frantically chasing material things first, or should we chase God first? We so often get entirely distracted by the glittering feasts of our own modern Babylon, forgetting that real substance and real transformation are only found when we prioritize faith over temporary wealth.
Because here's the profound dynamic at play. Sacrifice brings intervention. Whenever a genuine sacrifice is made for God, He steps in. I mean, think about it. If He can miraculously transform physical appearances in 10 days for captives in an ancient empire, imagine how He can intervene in our modern lives when we actually choose to obey Him. It's basically what we can call the Great Exchange. Chasing the temporary, flashy things of the world, that literally only leads to struggle, exhaustion, and pain. But choosing to obey God, that results in Him proving Himself completely faithful. And the absolute best part of this exchange is that what God gives in return is always infinitely greater than whatever we thought we had to give up.
Which brings us to our final, ultimate thought. Will you chase the temporary, or will you trust the eternal? Daniel's 10-day test isn't just some dusty history lesson. It's a living, breathing challenge for us today. As you go about your week, look closely at the king's food being offered to you, and ask yourself what you are truly purposing in your heart.